Welcome everyone to our next newest webinar. We're going to talk a little bit today about vehicle performance. We've done some on vehicle performance in the past. I'll put up some links to some of the previous ones in a bit. And if you're not here live and don't get the links, if you're watching on YouTube after we've recorded this and placed it up there, any links we speak about, all of that kind of thing will be just to go down to the description, and all of the links will be in that area as well. So if you hear us talk about a link, just go down there. You're going to get the presentation is available, the data that Matt is going to use today, the video. It's a large download because it's 2 data files and 2 video files, but it's there and you can download that and have all this exact same data we're going to look at today. And the math channels that Matt uses, a couple of them are kind of cool, I think, today, a little bit different than I've even seen. So those are going to be available for you to download and use as well. So appreciate everybody being here. Vehicle performance. We have talked about these. We have what we call the data analysis triangle. And the data analysis triangle, I always like to come up with little things that typically in threes that make things a little bit easier to remember and understand. And this is one of them. Your data is always going to fall into 3 things. Driver performance. How do we make the driver better? How do we look at different things and focus on that, because there's so much data that we need to thin this down a little bit. Then we have vehicle health, a very important one that is the one that has taken the longest for us to maybe get people to understand that that's a very, very important one that we focus on. And then now today we're going to talk about vehicle performance. So vehicle health, vehicle performance, and driver performance, the data analysis triangle. And the one of the other 3 that I always talk about is what happened, where did it happen, and why did it happen. Those are always really important ways to focus your mind on, to understand what to look for in the data instead of just clicking around in a sea of squiggly lines and trying to figure out stuff. Hey, what happened? You're slower in turn 1. What happened, where did it happen, in the middle of the corner, entry, exit, and then why. And you zoom in enough and you start to add enough channels and your racing knowledge that you have. Before long, you can start to understand, late on the throttle, car got loose, whatever, right? And you can kind of start to pick it out. So little tips and tricks of how to review data and not get overwhelmed by the massive amounts of data we can get these days, even on very, very affordable tools. So we're going to talk about vehicle performance today, and Matt is going to be the kind of leading the discussion. Matt has been here with us since the very first one, and many time co-host with us. And in the links that we're going to add in here, I'm going to add the last 5 webinars that he's co-hosted, and you can kind of take a look. But Matt is a dealer out of New Hampshire area that has been servicing customers for quite some time. As he says here, the leading technical and stocking AIM Sports dealer, seminars, track coaching, on-site, off-site support, online sales, and he works in the industry on top of it as a DAG, working in the Trans Am series typically, right, Matt? And the loves to do all these different things, and a new bullet. I didn't miss it, Matt. I did see it. The new crew chief to Jackson. I'll let Matt. Pardon me. I'll let Matt talk a little bit about the son coming up and starting to race with him in karts. It's national, typical way things happen, right? So it'll be kind of fun to chat about that a little bit. But Matt has been here with tons of co-hosting, but also almost always in the background handling links and answering questions and stuff, and in the background. So he's been here almost as much as me. I haven't missed any of them, but Matt has had to be on the road a couple of times and had to miss. But we've even have him been there on the phone while driving down the road, but not on camera though. So we try to keep that to a minimum. So Matt, tell us a little bit more about your crew chief duties lately.
My crew chief is the end of this summer. Jackson, my son, he's 13. He got into karting, jumped in the other kart, and we did a couple test days. Got into couple sportsman races, and this last weekend we run LO 206s, so there's different slides which act as restrictors. So he got the big restrictor, the big tires, and I will admit he beat me twice. I think three,
Matt and I have been chatting about it for quite some time, the last
right.
6 months or so. And Matt, it's just a matter of time. He's going to be faster than you shortly. It's just a matter of time, and
The
it happened faster than I thought it would. Tell you the truth. So
the first time he was 50 pounds light. We had no weight on the cart.
obviously,
And he got me by a little bit, and then he's been doing absolutely great. And I knew I was in trouble. We left the pits, and I let him go first, right? I'm being the good dad, and I want to kind of see what he's doing. And we go down the back straight, and I'm like, oh man, I can't catch him. He's like, I am in trouble.
it's kind of funny. Matt started right off. I want everybody to note. Started right off with excuse number one from the book. Right, he's 50 pounds lighter, so he's got a stack of excuses that I'm sure he'll work out in the next year, early in the spring. Have them all written down. So
The inside of the trailer is a big bingo wall for me.
that's
My
right.
tires are old, right?
Got a dartboard with
Yeah, oh yeah.
with excuses. There you go. Okay, what we're going to talk a little bit about is again, Matt often shares his data from his 914 Porsche, but today we're going to do the same basic data calculations and data analysis, but we're going to use karting data, and so just a little bit of something slightly different, but I think it'll be fun. So, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to. Am I sharing my screen? Yeah, I am. Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't show up exactly right. We're going to talk a little bit through a few slides on the presentation, and then we're going to, as we often do with Matt, he likes to live out there on the limb with the saw behind him a little bit, but he likes to go to live data quite a bit. So we're going to do that as well this time. So again, if anybody has any questions as we go, make sure you open and plug them into the question and answer box, and we will go from there. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you, and let's talk a little bit about what was the goal for the day.
Yes, this is perfect. So when I was looking for a data set for this is I have a lot of data with a lot of setup changes in it, but I can't always share it. So I figured this set was a good set of data. It's my data. I can share everything. And I was trying something that was interesting because I don't think anyone else had ever done it. So I have a Maranello kart. The thing's awesome. But one of my challenges, no matter what kart I get into, is I can over grip it, which if you only drive cars is something you don't really understand. Is in a go-kart, if you get too much grip, it actually slows you down. Um, in the car, like in recollection, I've experienced it once after they repaved Watkins Glen, and that track had so much grip. And I was offline in turn one, I got it sideways, and I could feel the car just slow down. Um, and some people would have the same thing for that first year going up the S's, where you could turn too much and slow the car down. Um, in the kart, it's not hard to do it. Like the constant battles to get it freed up enough that you can get it to rotate and really move, but not be overgripped. So I always have this trouble being overgripped. And my kart has the provision for a rear sway bar, which I have not ever talked to anyone that's tried it. So of course I did what I always do, and I kind of researched a little bit. I said, well, maybe it's like putting a harder axle in, and I didn't have a stiffer axle. And there was one for really cheap on eBay. So I bought one that was too big. I cut it down, I made it fit, and went to the track. Um, and to see if it would help ungrip the rear, kind of reduce the hopping. And then the last part was for me to get a bunch of laps and see kind of how things changed and what I could do and to keep improving in it. Um, and it's not really local to me. It's 4 hours away, but OVRP, Oakland Valley Raceway Park, is a really great track. Super family friendly, a lot of fun to drive, some good challenges, and some good people there to bounce ideas off and run with. So that's what I went to for the day. Um, and then part of it that Roger had mentioned, I think is my next slide here, is I had to keep really good notes. And I think this is in the link of things. So I found a setup sheet as I was looking through that had an opportunity to kind of include all the baseline stuff that's on the far left, and then all your changes through. And then I did a few too many, so I kind of added my own spots on the bottom. But it gave me the opportunity to keep tracks of everything I did. And as I went through the day, I started out another weird one that you can do with karts is the rear tires are 710s or 6-inch, but you can run them on wide or narrow rims. So I started out the day with wide tires on narrow rims, and then I moved to brand new tires, wide ones on wide rims, because that's the standard you run at that track. And then I tried the rear bar going full soft, full hard, a 45, so kind of in the middle. Then took the bar off, added a seat strut to try that, and then I went back to that baseline that I really did in run number 2 and saw how the kart ran. Um, that was, I didn't add up the laps. I think it was 120 laps total. Like it was 12 to 18 each session, I think. So a pretty busy day, pretty long, but a ton of fun. Like anytime you get to go drive, I just have a blast and I get to try out some new stuff.
It's kind
So
of funny, but all the stuff that Matt just talked about there is if you're trying to do a cart to car correlation, a lot of the stuff he just talked there is sway bars. It's kind of the same thing on that side, but it's shock settings and compression and rebound settings, and there's stuff that he's done there that is analogy the same analogy as adjustments on your car, right? Carts don't have suspension; they have noodles for frames, right? And they and it's all about how the frame twists up and lifts that inside rear tire in the corner, and when does it release the track, how high does it go, and when does it come back down and touch the track, because it's a solid rear axle, and if it doesn't do all that right, and both tires are trying to touch the track in the middle of the corner, it's a huge understeering mess all of a sudden, right? And if it lifts up too much, then there's a whole lot of other things that are going on. So again, the analogy being, how you set up your race car. So it's all pretty cool that you start to learn these things. And often what I found, and Matt has found the same a little bit, is when you come from cars or come from other things, almost everything that I was working when I was adjusting carts was almost always backwards to me than what I thought it was going to be. So with my own mind, as I was thinking of how to adjust my kid's cart, it was like I would do that, and I said, and if nobody was there to ask or help me, I would well, I'm going to try the opposite first, because that's typically the way it's going to go.
Um, yeah, and the big part I want to share with this is as you do your car stuff, if you cross out cart setup on this and you write car setup, it's the same sheet you use. And the important part, whatever sheet you like, however it looks, just keep those notes so that when you go back through, you can have them. And to Kyle's point in the chat, there's use those log sheets in Race Studio 3 in your data files, because you'll see as you go through, a lot of times I have my gear in there, so I don't have to try to remember that and look back and forth, but you can put a lot of that information in your data files. So make sure you cross that, because it was a webinar a while ago. You can reference that in your math channels. You can go back and pull that information out as you're doing it.
One of the links that of your last 5 webinars that you did, one of those is that using of log sheets and some other things as part of the math channel. So that you guys will have a link for that here in just a little bit.
Perfect.
Okay, next
And
page.
then,
Or you were you done?
so a rough idea, kind of how I thought about doing this analysis after I kind of looked at everything and went off my notes. And my notes are in that sheet. You can see when I said it was tighter or looser and everything.
Down here.
Yeah, and they're in the notes where I kind of said it was tighter, it was looser. The one that's kind of surprised me when I put the bar to full hard, it just felt stiff. Like it felt like I added a whole bunch of compression in the rear that it just like locked it down. But if we hop to the next slide, what I kind of thought is I said, well, I'll look at that as a global thing, and I'll look at my min and my max speeds, the lat G and the long G, and then I can kind of dig back in and see where are these little changes in there. And is it in the corner speed? Really thinking min there. Is it in I say min or max lat G? Obviously because left and right's positive and negatives. Ultimately, what's that time change? And then something a little bit different in karts, but it matters in the car too a lot, is the distance. Like, did it allow you to drive a different line, or did it change the consistency of it, or anything like that? In the kart, that distance you drive becomes really important sometimes. In the car, maybe it's not as important, but maybe as a measure of consistency, it helps you figure out, were you able to do the same thing lap after lap, or were you fighting the car? So it's an easy one to look at, and it doesn't take any extra sensors. It's in your data set already. And then the next one was another performance thing that we're going to look at is kind of the second part, a big deal in go-karts that doesn't exist in cars. But if you're able to make differential changes or maybe gear changes, this is one of the ones, the analysis portion of it becomes the same, is how the clutch works and how it slips. I wanted to show two things. The left is kind of the graph of how we're going to take a look at this. The right, that's the clutch out of my kart. It's a Hilliard. I mess them up all the time. I can't remember if it's a Flame or an Inferno. I think it's a Flame. The difference is in the shoes. Um, and then in the outside parts that are sort of shaped like a backwards seven, upside down, actually an L. Those are the shoes, and that's what rubs the drum on the outside that covers all this up. And then the half moons, the four of them that you see, are actually the springs. So as the clutch spins, the weight of the wheel of the shoes tries to pull out and it contacts the drum, and that's what slips and then locks up and goes. And then those half moons are the springs that hold everything down, and then they come in and out. So they wear a whole bunch, and then how they slide and how you set them up, and then there's different spring tensions. That all becomes a thing. This is a picture. Once you do them a little bit, you can tell the kind of top and bottom springs are white ones. The left and right ones are black. That's a super common setup that everybody says, two whites, two blacks. I've played with it a bunch, but this is going to give you a way that you can go in here and play with it and make that analysis for yourself. Is like your weight, your kart, your setup. What is the best spring setup to get the most out of it?
In the end of the day, and Matt's going to have show this in live data, but this is two different laps, and he's got the accelerometer data, but here he's got the RPM leaving the same corner, and you can see one is slipping higher than the other, right? And it's all about making sure where the slip is happening is in the meat of the power band of the engine to get the best acceleration rate. So this is really an important thing in karting, is to get this thing. It's like making sure your transmission ratios are correct. So,
Um,
okay.
so, and then I think the next one we're going to hop into some of that live data. And to answer Russ's question, yes, in the kart, you run so much caster that it changes the weights a lot. And that's one of your big tuning tools, is how much caster you keep in there or not. And then your track width, because you're changing that platform. Like if you think of it as a plane, you're changing how narrow or wide it is. Sort of if you're standing on a boat or subway or something moving, how wide you have your feet really gives you the stability. And the more you move it in, the more pressure and the more kind of dynamic it is. Same kind of ideas.
Charles, a little bit earlier in the chat box, mentioned in the car world, crossweight is vital in setting in the setup, right? But what is the kart equivalent? Matt just mentioned it, but there's not only a lot of caster, but then there's a kingpin inclination variable in there as well. So when you turn the tire, you're cranking in cross weight when you do that, and it's for a whole different purpose in a kart. But it's, you crank in the cross weight, and the kart automatically jumps up and lifts up the inside rear tire. It's another help to lift that inside tire to start the lifting process when you start to turn into the corner. So it lifts that up a little bit earlier, because if there's delay in getting that tire lifted up, your entry is always going to be an understeer. So there's this whole inclination of a heavy duty caster, right? And where it you can see with people that need a little bit of more additional lift in that inside rear tire, they'll throw a lot more caster at it, a little bit more kingpin inclination, and but it gets heavier to steer because you're physically lifting the inside tire with the steering wheel, and so it. Guys that are a little bit heavier or have a chassis that is built in such a way, they have a lot heavier steering, and on a hot day that can become something that's a little bit hard on the arms. So.
Oh yeah, that would send us down a whole different rabbit hole. I'm still working on finding the bottom.
Exactly. Well, I don't think you ever will, but I just wanted to explain to folks that it's a complex thing. Karts are so simple, but yet so complex. So.
Super. And just to hit that point, one last kind of way is I was in a shop and they had an electric kart on the scale pads, and I think the total weight was 450, and it was pretty even, but it still had more rear weights. So say it was 125 each rear and 100 on each front. When they turned the wheel, there was a young lady, she's 16 in the shop, and she was able to reach down and easily pick up the inside rear. Like that's how much weight jacking that goes on with all that caster and everything. It's pretty wild, and it's very different than cars. But then all of a sudden, it makes you start thinking. You're like, well, what if I did try some of this? What if I did do these things? Uh,
and then there's camber settings. It's like normal as well. But I never did worry too much about the camber stuff because every time you're turning the tires, if you're just a little bit off of center, your camber changes as well. So,
yeah.
as I go to kart tracks and there's people out there racing that have been doing it a lot longer than I have and at a very high level, they are very, very touchy on their camber settings as well. So it must be important.
Yes.
So, okay.
So here, if I start sharing,
I'm going to stop my share so you can.
perfect.
There you go.
And we go share. We're going to pull up
There it's
this
starting. It's
studio
starting to
3.
show. And not yet.
Oh,
It's
go.
trying. It's trying. Sometimes it takes a little time. There, it just popped up. Okay, we're
All
seeing
right.
you. We're seeing you.
So what I'm going to do here real quick, I have all my sessions open, but um, in my sessions, we can go, here's my day. I opened up the sessions that had everything so we can see here's all my laps, um, my lap times. And an important one as you're working through these things, because your setup sheet goes kind of in order the runs. Remember, you can sort by clicking on these columns um, and bring your first session up to the top and then down, or you can sort by best time, all those things. Um, Frequently, I'll go by time because I want to see those fast laps. And then when I go back to my setup sheet, I'm trying to find it. I have to remember to go back.
Matt, you got a little. We've got a little black box over the right edge. Maybe you can minimize that
Oh,
little black
that
box there.
is
It's black for us. There you go. Now we see your full screen now.
perfect. Um, so remember, as you're doing it, you can go through and do those. And you can also see I favorited some of the sessions because they were good or bad or um, whatnot. But then if we hop back in the data and we go for that kind of full overview, here's my fast lap from each session. And I pulled this up. This is just the AIM default profile because I wanted to be able to use this to kind of show how powerful it can be um, all by itself without going into everything and making up custom profiles, which I do a lot. But then sometimes I go in and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of organize this how I need it. So the first thing I look at when I go in here is I see there's a pretty big difference in the corner speeds. Like my driving part of it was pretty consistent and my brake points were consistent. Um, we see those are pretty accurate everywhere. And then if we pull up our lateral G, and I really like using the search bar. I work off the GPS lateral G because at 25 hertz, it's great. We can see what I did and I asked of the cart was really consistent. These points are very close. And if we look at a lot of them and we kind of zoom in, if we use our delta function, we're going to see like the cross in all of these is, um, where'd we go? We lost. Sometimes we get too many open, but we're within a couple feet as we go in because we can use our scale. That's 40 feet across the bottom, 20 feet. So we're within a few feet of where it crosses zero and all these turn-ins happen. Um, so I look at that, and that's kind of my first part was, did I drive it consistent enough to make good data to then kind of dig in and try to compare stuff? So from there, I said, well, the global ones, the way I will usually start digging into it is I'll go in and turn on um, the min, the max, and the average. Now, the average is directly related to your lap time, but then we can see some differences in the minimum speeds, and they're all in the same corner, the hairpin here. And we can see that they range from 18.4 up to 20.7. In the 20s is pretty good speed right there. And to get more than that is really where you need to be super fast. And it's something I'm working on. I can't do consistent. We can see my top speeds are all pretty accurate or pretty similar. There's only one that really changed in here, and we can see it went to 53.2. And that is because I'm pretty sure that was the session that a 9-year-old hopped in a cart and gave me the business and a big old push down the front straight. So we can see how those things varied a little bit.
Nine-year old pushing you around. Geez, Matt.
Yeah, right. I've only got almost 40 years on the kid. Um, but it was all good fun. And it was actually when like then you go over and thank the kid, right?
Exactly.
Um, and then we can go in here, and then I do the same thing for my lateral acceleration because I say like, how much did this all change? Here we can see some pretty big changes. Is we see the minimum one here is 1.82 Gs, and then we have up to 2.17. Um, and the same thing the other way, we get 1.57 to 2. And when we look, they're in the same corner, right? Like they're clustered pretty similar. Um, and we see those levels are pretty similar across the lap. So again, the driving is pretty similar, but we see some real differences in that what the setups did. Um, the other way we can look at these is to hop into the channels report and see the same thing. Um, we can have our lap distances and our max RPM, our max speeds, and our minimum speeds. And this is where I find the graph is pretty helpful, is that as we click on these columns, we can go in and without having to read everything, we can take a look and see. So if we click on our max speed for the sessions across the laps, we can see where they are from 51.6 to 52.2. Sometimes it's a little deceiving because the graph can look like it's spread out pretty good, but it's really the zoom level. As you zoom in or out, it'll make those little tiny differences look much bigger than they are. And again, this is just like the graph in the time distance that you can zoom out by using the scroll wheel or kind of clicking up and down. And we can see, max speeds are pretty similar. Um, min speeds, this is where we saw similar, but there is some variance. What the changes we were making did matter. Um, and then here, the lateral acceleration, this is where it really started to change. We can see there's some good outliers in here, and all those. So when I go back to my time distance, um, one of the things I want to do when I look at all this, I say this is a huge amount of data. It's a lot to try to go through. And as I've been working with a bunch of kids and everything, it's really hard to go into this and separate and do it. So sometimes I like to distill and pull out maybe a couple laps or a couple sessions that were more important. Um, and what we can do in there is we can say this first session, the 12-12 session with the fastest lap was the baseline. That was the one, it was new tires, straight up setup, and we can say that was good. We can go in and turn off the other. So let's just take one to go for the biggest difference to make things kind of stand out the most and say we're going to leave this session open and close the laps on the others.
Matt's doing a little bit of a technique that a lot of people don't know you can do. You just noticed he's closed the laps, but he didn't close the test. And that's, you can see that the test is still open there over on the left side there. Yep, there. A lot of people think they have to close the test totally in order to get rid of all of the laps, but you can do that and then bring up the laps again real quickly. So kind of a handy little tool that he's using there.
Yeah, I like to do that because I don't have to load everything. I can just come back
Exactly.
into Roger likes to use the laps toolbar at the bottom. I like to use it here, but you can just go in and click a lap back on, and you don't have to try to load
And
things
we
to go
both
back
like
out.
to use that laps button in the upper right corner to just bring up the best lap for all of them real quickly, right?
Yes, that is one of my favorites. Um, so if we go here and we say this is my fastest baseline, this was the bar at full soft, and here's full hard. And we can see it had the biggest difference in lap times. We can say, what did that do? What effect did it have in here? I always think, just like when I'm driving, is I go through and I look at where did the speed change. So we can see there's a pretty big difference here in turn one. Through the middle, it was 1.8 miles an hour. The turn two sequence, it was probably about the same. Turn three, we see it. We see it on the entry to four. In the hairpin, kind of nothing here. Now, again, this is one, as you're really digging through this, it takes more than the hour that we have today, is go in and turn on some more laps, right? Make sure that there's not some small anomaly in there and you can pick them out. And look and say, was this consistent with what I did? Was it an exception? Is this really what it shows?
Strength in numbers, having a little bit extra data
Yep.
really helps. One thing I'd like to, it's counterintuitive, so I thought this would be a good time to do it. Matt is showing this the speed and the speed and the lateral G's here, and then the time compared down at the bottom. And and he went through the GPS speed and looked at the gaps between the fast and low in turn one right there, and that's looks like a huge number, right? That's a and it is that is as big as anywhere else on the track. Maybe that turn three a little bit, but the interesting thing is look at the time compare bar and focus on that where you are seeing the amount of time gained or lost in that area. And then there at about 1,500 feet in the lap in turn six, there is a big bump up in the time loss. And look at the difference visually on the speed trace. It is not that high. And the reason that this works this way is when you have a lower speed corner, you're in that corner for a lot longer time, but not as much, distance wise, but and speed difference wise. But boy, that's why when we talk about different ways of analyzing the data, get your low speed corners right first, because that is the biggest time gain loss that you can get. That little bit of difference, that 1 or 2 miles per hour, half a mile per hour in that turn six, was a big change in the actual time loss. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. Not only study that GPS speed trace, because that is important, obviously, but also look at the time compare bar, because that's where you see where you actually lost the most time or gained the most time.
Yeah, and to work towards Roger's point with this one is I did something I built off Ray's webinar, the last one that he did, which was last week or 2 weeks ago. And I went in here and I built some math channels. And one of them I did was just the sector average speed. So if we pull that up, we can now see that all these sectors that I have up at the top make a little bit more sense. So in the middle of turn one, and now when I say the middle of turn one, I tried to get where that lat G was the most. And I can say there now the speed difference was 1 mile an hour on average through that space. And then we can take that for each area. So turn two, it was 1. Turn three, it was 1. And one of the ones we might want to check is how many decimals we're showing.
Yeah.
So let's
And
pull out.
as Matt's tweaking that, the math channels that Matt is using here are all downloadable in the chat box for those of you here live, or in the description box down below if you don't know how to make your own sector average speed math channel.
It takes just a second to chug through as we're running with.
You've got a lot of data loaded and a lot of math channels.
Yes. And the future sessions that we're going to look at are opened up here too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. It didn't. Oops. Ooh,
there we go.
Look at that. There it goes. Okay.
Turned our laps back on. So let's
Perfect.
just go. Sometimes when you're working with Zoom in the background, it changes things out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So now when we have those extra decimal points, we can see turn one was really 1.2. Turn two is 0.9. In turn three, we have 1.8. 4, we're seeing an even 1. In the hairpin, the corner Roger was talking about, it's only 0.6 miles an hour, but look at the difference in the time slip. We go from 358 to, you lose 2/10 in this little tiny zone.
Yeah, crazy how that works. Keep your eye on that, everybody, as you're doing your own data analysis. Right. Find the area where the time loss is the greatest. It's almost all it will be in the lower speed corners to begin with, and that's why giving a little bit of getting off the throttle a little bit at the end of a long straightaway. We're going to see some data in Matt's here in a little bit where he's on the rev limiter at the end of the straightaway. You don't lose that much time there because you're only gaining 1 mile per hour over 56 miles per hour or something, right? So
right. And then we can go through all the corners this way, and using the sector tools is pretty neat to kind of get that. And then the other things that I did is I went in and took the average G-force in those spots. So let's turn off our average speed. And then you can do the same thing and compare and go, what was the G-force difference on average through the middle of that corner, which really matters. And we can say in turn one, when we went in and added that bar, I lost 0.08 Gs, which was, say, almost 0.5%. Significant. And the same thing in turn two, we can see those difference 0.1 in here. It's almost a 10% reduction in G-force through turn three. One of the corners that is really important at this track. But interestingly, In the left-hander, it was almost nothing. Like kind of statistically insignificant. It was 0.01. Um, the hairpin, that makes such a difference. Look at that. It's a full 0.1, almost 10% in this corner of how much of a difference it made. So these give you ways with these math channels to go in and without doing a lot of really hard work is to pull these up and then kind of see how much of a difference that made inside there. And then you can just keep drilling through this and trying to dig down and go like, what's important? And one of the things that I found really important as I do these things is sometimes I'll spend half an hour, 45 minutes looking into this path and going, okay, well, what built the G and how did it look? Or I start zooming in and you can double click on it and go, okay, well, the difference was 0.1. Well, where was that? What made the real difference? You're like, okay, it was here. This is where we see the big difference in it. And what part of the corner? Ooh, that's center out. So is this a problem of the throttle pickup in the center out and how it starts to work it? And it's as I'm unwinding the wheel.
Substantially different line taken as well. You may have hit the curb on that blue one and lost some grip.
Right. So it gives you all those things to look at and start digging in more and saying, okay, was this a matter of there? Or, geez, it looks like I did really get it up on that curb, right? Trying to shortcut, but it didn't help. And you go, okay, well, we can go into that video file and look and say, okay, was there something different here? I believe we have all the videos here, so we
Yeah.
can pull them
As
up.
Matt loads that up, what happened? Where did it happen? Why did it happen? Matt is going through
Right.
those steps right now.
There we go. So we can pull up the video and look at it and come back
On your
and
data
say
movie
how
tab,
much tighter was
you
I?
lost your lateral G graph on
Oh,
the video one. Search bar right there. There you
but
go.
we can see it was because as we come up, I could just see and get back far enough. There we go.
Yeah, you can see it.
You can just see right here, there's no curb, and there's the curb. And as I approach this corner, I definitely get it up on there.
Yeah, you can see the
Right.
front of the
So
chassis flex. Yeah.
is this a case of this is the rebound, right? So the video starts to add so much more. And the big benefit here with the SmartyCam is to just be able to load the file and you have it all. And all this analysis that we're doing, you could do straight off just the video file. So it's really powerful and it speeds up your day working on that. So a great way to do that. The other one, so we don't run out of time, because I thought this was pretty interesting and it's one I probably got myself in a little bit of hot water 3 or 4 times with is how the clutches work, because there's a lot of kind of institutional knowledge and people say, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. What you saw here was the 2 white, 2 black. Everybody tells you that's what to do, but I've never seen a lot of people test it. So one of the ones I'm doing is I'm the data guy, and I said, well, like I'll just put different springs in. We'll keep trying this and see what it does. So what I have here is just a regular time distance graph. I have speed for 2 laps, RPM underneath, and then I did a math channel that is speed per RPM, and I just divided it. So I took my RPM, I divided it by the speed, because if the clutch is locked up and nothing's happening, then it's just gonna stay pretty steady. And that's what we see the majority of the time. You can see the clutch disengages some when you're on the brakes. But then we see these other spots with these big spikes up. The spikes down are when it's on the rev limiter, and then the RPMs go all wonky and it's going to read something nuts. And that's, you can also see it in the speed trace, that the speed trace really just levels off. But the interesting part is when it comes up and it slips, because we can see the speeds are pretty similar, the RPMs are not, and the slip is different. So what I like to do here is use my area zoom and take a look. And with this one, I'm going to resize my graphs a little bit. So here, now what we can really see is as I came in, my minimum speeds in here are very close at 19.7 and 20.3. The average speed across the sector is within 0.2, and the graphs line up pretty well. So there's not a lot of difference in the speed, but this RPM change is gigantic. And what we're seeing through there is in the red trace, that was 46.4, slightly slower. we can see that the clutch started slipping a whole bunch more. So where they picked up the same, it got to the point where on the red trace it was at 3,600 RPM versus just almost 3,300 RPM. So it picked up 300 more RPM and it did it for this whole distance. And if we use our delta, we can then dig in and say, what was that distance? And it was 161 feet. So for almost 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 seconds, it was slipping the clutch for that long. And that's all time that changes your acceleration. So that's one we can pull up in here and give ourselves, not our lat, so used to using that one. We can look at our longitudinal acceleration, and I'm going to put it down here on the bottom. I'm going to turn off my delta for a minute. And this is what I found really interesting. Even with all this clutch slip, even the speeds were roughly the same, the acceleration is almost the same. It didn't make a giant difference in there. And we can see there was some initial difference in the time compare, and then it really came back to the same point. And a key that I thought about when I started to do this, I said, geez, could I do this with a whole bunch of math channels? And I could figure out the average through these things. And then I thought, when you go to your settings, underneath the delta values, what to show with them, you can pick to give you an average. So now if I pick my first point here where they're about the same, choose my delta function and come back to where it locked up, I get my first point, the difference, and then the average. So we can see my average speed was almost the same across that point, 24.6 to 24.5. My RPMs were certainly different, 3,600 versus 3,371, 3,400. We can see the amount it slipped on average was different, and the acceleration was slightly different, right? The average acceleration was 0.07 versus 0.05. I'll save your work, Kyle. It's even slower than the 914.
That's funny.
And then as you kind of go through these, you can play with these points a little bit and see, does it change that average much? So if we tighten it up and say, maybe right from its slipping, we can see it's 0.02. But in the time compare, we see it doesn't change those values a lot, right? It changes it 200ths. So it is a matter. Is that the point for me that I think is the biggest one? Like, no, that little bit of extra clutch slip is probably not the point of doing it all. And then two of the questions I saw there was, could you do a scatter plot with slip versus acceleration? Absolutely. That might even be, nope, that's a GG graph. But you could certainly put this one and do that and change this to, say, RPM, and then go in here, put speed, and then compare it this way. And then I'm just going to hop over here so I can zoom out to my whole lap again, turn off my delta. Remember, everything's super dynamically linked.
You get speed versus speed there. Speed versus speed.
Yeah. Right. That doesn't help us.
Yeah, there you go.
I was looking at that going, that doesn't look right, right? We get two straight lines. So here you can see the difference in the shapes.
There you go.
Where this one's much tighter and this one's here. So the reason I do it with the graph, and this is a good illustration, is the data is the same. What it's telling us is exactly the same, but it's showing it in different ways. So this definitely shows us there's a difference between here and here. But when I hop into the data file or into a time distance and I see these numbers are different and I can see the RPM different, to me, that's a more powerful statement, and it resonates with me more. And as a driver, when I think back and I close my eyes and I drive out of that corner and I can hear the motor a little bit different, I see this is what really tells me about it.
I agree. I think I can see it better there than in the scatter plot, but maybe with many more laps, the scatter plot probably becomes a better way. But what this really tells us at the end of the day is on these 4-stroke karts, we're only talking a 300 RPM difference there. and that the torque is probably very, very similar between that 300 RPM, because I would have thought the difference would have been larger than that, but in the end, it's pulling about the same, strength, the same, yank coming out of that corner. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. Um, and then a couple of questions the guys had was,
Kyle
yes,
said,
Bjorn,
yeah,
you're right. It should probably be RPM per speed,
right.
but it doesn't sound as good. Doesn't roll off the tongue right.
Exactly.
Um, that's on my bingo board too. It's one of my excuses. Um, it is a totally dry clutch. Um, they're a little bit weird to do it, but it is dry. Yeah, the clutch, there's published graphs on it. It is pretty level. I don't have a built motor, so it's a box stock from Briggs and Stratton. It would be interesting to see engine shaft speed versus clutch turns. Bruce, you are 100% right. And the speed ring has been on my axle. I have not built the mount for it because every chance I go, I could do that, or I'm like, or you could prep the cart and go race again. And that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah, I've actually done it the other way as well. I've had the axle speed, which in effect is the clutch, output. You have to do the math with the driven and the
Yeah.
drive gear, but you get there. And I've actually seen some folks on in our friend David Smith's world of dirt cart oval. They'll actually put a a speed sensor up on the backside of the clutch, so they're actually trying to get it where they get a direct reading, and then it's just RPM versus that outside of the clutch, shell, and get that direct reading. A little bit more accurate, but in effect, though, to be fair, what Matt's showing here is we're getting what we want, right? And we're also finding that the difference that we're seeing there on this particular motor with his weight and his cart and the way that it all works on this particular corner, that little bit of slip doesn't matter. So then what Matt would do next is go there and tighten that thing up or free it up a little bit more and see if he can get that that time difference in that area or that longitudinal acceleration to be better. It may not ever be. It may be, it may set in there, and this may not be a big deal. Two-stroke karts, I have found it to be a big deal, where the window, the torque band is much more non-linear. It's very more peaky, and you got to get it into that area of the torque.
Yeah, or to kind of tie things together, it gives you that opportunity. You go back like we started and you go like, okay, the next time I go, what's my test plan? Well, my test plan is to see, is this important? Is it something we can change? So we're going to service the clutch. We're going to make sure it's ready to go. Then we're going to make a setup change that we think is really good for that corner, see what that time change is and how much it mattered. Or go the other way and go like, we're going to totally throw that corner out and give it up and say, how much does it make in the other corners? And play that game and then use it as this vehicle performance and start going back and look at all your laps and try to figure out what's the best way for you to make that time across the lap. And I'll even say, some of it as a driver, I know the spots in here that are really performance driven. It bugs the heck out of me when this is a big hill right here. And we can see it in the altitude. It bugs the heck out of me when people drive by me right there. You can see how much this hill goes up as the speed goes. Super annoying in the corners, like in turn 1 and 2, you can hold your own. 3 and 4, they get you a little bit, but man, when they pull you on the straightaway or they get you going down the front straight, it just bugs the heck out of you. So I look at it and I go,
forever in that cart too, right? It's a long straightaway and not super fast, so you have a long time to sit there and watch them.
and so to me, I try to make it better here and here, and I'll figure out what I got to do to be better in the other spots because these ones are the ones that really bug me.
And to tidy up the how you handle this information on this clutch is we've just done a little study. It's only been 2 laps, and we'd want to dig in a little bit deeper, but we've noticed that there isn't a big difference. But there, as Matt watches that area, they're around 1,500 feet on that clutch slip, and the RPM that's popping out of that, as the clutch wears, you're going to start to to understand and come up with a number that you could plug into a channel report and say, hey, if my speed per RPM is greater than 200, or something like that, right? Pick your number. All of a sudden, my clutch is slipping higher than it is, and now it's outside of that nice big flat torque curve. There's what you start to watch, right? And that, okay, now I know I can get 3 races before I need to rebuild the clutch or something, right? Because it really doesn't matter, but up until it gets to this spot when I start to actually lose my acceleration. So, interesting way of tying this together with your vehicle maintenance and that side of it.
Yep. And back to the vehicle performance is it's all find these spots where you're kind of inquisitive about it, and then either run the experiment, run all the setups, and come back to the data and check it out. Or as you sit here, this one I found is just going through the data and looking at the RPM and the drops and everything, and all of a sudden going, hey, what happened here? And like, yeah, in between them is when I serviced the clutch and really changed it.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
I think for me, Roger, that gives all the live data. I have not looked at the questions at all, but
We did not get any in the question box. We were able to pick them out of
right.
the chat box pretty well. So I appreciate everybody throwing those in there. That was very nice of everybody. Appreciate that. Thank you, Matt. And let me share my screen to get back to the slide. And if you still have a question, just let us know. We'll jump in on it real quickly, but we'll start to kind of wind this one down. The interesting, again, I just want to throw that in there before we run on. It was Kart Day. A lot of folks that are watching here today, and maybe will watch this on YouTube later, have cars or sports cars or off-road UTVs or all these different things. Don't get wrapped up in the type of data that we were analyzing, but rather the tools that Matt was using, because that's the critical part, right? All of the things that he was doing were tools you can apply to not just clutch slip. It might be something else, right? It might be front wheels. If you had 4-wheel speeds, average the front tires versus the average of the rear tires, and start to get a slip, and use that same exact kind of a function, and start to plot that coming off the slow corners and see how it looks. Maybe it's a rain race and you do the same thing. All of a sudden you can see exactly how much slip was giving you the best pure drive forward, that kind of a thing. So the
And
video.
I'll just add,
Go ahead, Matt.
this was clutch slip, right? But if we worked it the other way, if you had a car with adjustable ABS, or you were looking at a traction control or even diff function, and you had those wheel speeds, it's the same process, right? It's one wheel slipping versus the other. You can build the same sort of math channel and then work it through to say like, okay, it slipped this much, it slipped that much. This is my fine tuning window.
Yeah, you use the exact same process, but instead of acceleration, it's on the decel side because you have ABS brakes and you're trying to check them. Yeah, perfect point, perfect analysis. This video, as soon as we get done here, and I'm going to take it and YouTube has a process that they need me to do, and put this all together and throw it up on YouTube at youtube.com/aim data if you haven't visited there. And all of our videos go up there and are there for you within an hour or so, maybe hour and a half of the end of the live webinar. So if you can't make the live ones, you can show up at YouTube. You can turn on the option there to get a message when we add a new video, so you'll know when they're up there, and come and check it out. Again, as we've said in the past, all the links that we've shared will always be in the description below, and a little bit of information on how what we were going to talk about and some of the details. So go ahead and check those out. I also work pretty hard at getting all the right keywords in there. So if you wanted to look back for something on vehicle performance of some of the other webinars we've done on the same topic, go there, and there's a nice little search bar when you're inside the AIM website, the AIM part of YouTube. And there's a search bar right by inside. Once you're on the AIM part of it, type in vehicle performance, type in Matt Romanowski, type in clutch, type in some words there. I use a lot of the keywords when I put these things together, so hopefully you can find the videos on the things that you want to look at by searching YouTube. So we'll have it up there shortly, and go take a look. The kind of ending of the year, and so we don't have as many races that we go support like we do maybe in the middle of summer, but AIM is still really pretty busy with our technicians. There are a lot of winter events in the southern half of the United States, and even some indoor stuff that we travel to, obviously. So our customer support goes on, whether or not it's live at the track or at our AIM tech number, 800-718-9090. drop emails to us. That's a lot of what we do here. We want to make sure you get the most bang out of your data analysis, data hardware buck that you've spent, and we want to make sure we help you as much as we can, not just from AIM, but guys like Matt that are our dealers that are out there supporting the products all the time as well. So give us a holler. We'll help you out. Our next webinar. Next webinar is November 25th. It's our earlier in the day, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have James Colburn dialing in and jumping on with us from London, England, and going to talk about the next step of using AI for data analysis and using Race Studio 3 data. James, this is something that James has been working with, and I've been working with, and we're both intrigued by it. And there's some kind of cool things that you can do. And James's earlier AI webinar that he did with us was highly enjoyed by a lot of folks. Got just a ton of emails from folks saying, "Well, that was pretty cool. I had no idea we could do things like this." A lot of us that aren't super tech savvy sometimes with the AI world may not know everything that's available to us. So James is really good at explaining it, setting it up, showing you what to do. And so join us for our next webinar on the 25th, and I think you'll find that interesting. We're making great strides really quickly, and we're even working on it's already out in beta, not in the beta, but a pre-beta release where we have an AI data export for getting your data out of AIM, out of Race Studio 3 already in the right format, and just be able to do what James is going to talk about without having to get in there and modify the data files, the Excel spreadsheets or CSV spreadsheets that we output. So join us then, and we'll chat with James, and looking forward to that. So contact information as we kind of close this one down. There's some information on Matt. I've put it into the chat box as well. The Matt, of course, being the owner of Trailbreak, Matt at trailbreak.com, and he also is pretty active on Instagram out there at Trailbreak Matt. So jump in there to take a look at some of the stuff he does. He's even changed the picture here where we now got a image of him on his cart, right? So that's pretty cool. And there's my email address if you have any questions about stuff that I might be able to help you with, Roger at aimsports.com. So Matt, tell us a little bit about a little bit more on the contact information, a little bit about your cart as we kind of close this one down.
Yeah, you can reach out to me, Matt at trailbreak.com. Give me a call. The number's on the website. The contact form comes through, all those sorts of things. I try to get to Instagram and YouTube. I got to get back on the video trail. There's a couple changes at the shop here that derailed me for a little bit and moving things around to get it going. But that's on the docket for the winter. And then that's me in the cart. The number goes back to the first race car that I got to work on. The Formula Continental was 42. A lot of people get the reference to the number. And then the Maranello, the importer, is a really great guy. The cart's amazing. I'm really happy with it, that every time I go out in there and I look at it, I go, man, this is a hot rod. I got to drive this thing better. So it's nice to know that I'm the problem in it. And then I've got it. You can see just the back of the Micron 6 on there. And then I have the Smarty Cam 3 Sport, a small battery pack in there to keep everything going. So that has helped me tremendously. And then I've met a really great group of people that I can go out there and grab data from, the guys who hold the lap record and everything. And then really kind of work in and try to figure out where to go. I'm not sure if that says something about their friendliness or my inability to catch them, but we'll see as the time passes.
As you keep getting faster and faster, their friendliness will probably detune just a little bit, right? As you keep getting,
Right.
especially your kid, right? So the other thing that I notice on this, as we kind of close this down, obviously we're running just a tick long, but he's got his sports car racing hands on the steering wheel here just a little bit. He's got one hand up there where it belongs, and he's got this one down because he likes to pull on the wheel. So we'll break him of that habit and get him to put it where it belongs, so the cart will actually do what it's supposed to do. That's it's kind of funny how carts work, and they work with where your hands are and where you're pushing and some other weird stuff. So we'll get Matt there. So
Working on it.
exactly. I appreciate everybody coming. I really appreciate you, Matt, for coming in and doing this one as your busy time in your world, but you take the time to do this, and it's always appreciated. So thank you very much.
Anytime.
And it must have been hot there. He's even got his suit unzipped there a little bit to get a little extra air there. But the little things that I see, I'm afraid. So thanks, Matt. Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to the next one when we come back and talk a little bit about AI with our friend James Colburn. Talk to everybody soon, and we'll see you next time. Talk to you then.